Good morning. The Committee of the Whole is called to order. The people of Guam, we have the panel. We're pretty much all set, but we're just waiting till we reach a quorum. Until such time, we will remain on recess. Thank you. Committee of the Whole is called to order. Halfway. The materials for the Committee of the Whole are in shared session Google Drive labeled 2.2222, Committee of the Whole. Rules of engagement, 3 rounds for discussion. We will have 2 rounds of questions for the panel, with each center allotted 5 minutes for questions, not including responses. Time to speak may not be used from more than one member to another. A member who used that member's time on a question use all that member's time on that question and may not later speak, even if all the time used was not used. At the completion of the 2 rounds of questions, panelists will be excused, and the 3rd round is for amendments or comments to speak on the bill. Proposed amendment must be submitted in writing to the clerk via email, 36glsession@gmail.com. Amendments not in writing will be called out of order. Colleagues, be mindful of that. After you complete the discussion of the bill, I will allow the sponsor to close, and I will entertain a motion for the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole. Then we'll proceed to the next bill. After we have completed deliberating the bills, I will entertain a motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole, at which time I'll report out the bills as recommended by the Committee of the Whole. At this point, I would ask the Sergeant-at-Arms to please swear in the panel. I ask the panels to please rise.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you all affirm that any and all information that you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. Mr. Chair, you're under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you, Sergeant-at-Arms. I'd like to identify who are on the panel. We have the Director of Bureau of Budget and Management Research, which is Director Lester Carlson. We have the Director of Department of Revenue and Taxation, Daphne Simsel. We have the Director of Department Administration, Mr. Edward Byrne. And to my left would be the Director of the Office of Finance and Budget. At this time, we are at Bill 202-36CR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, introduced by Senator Mary Camacho Torres, co-sponsored by Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munoz Barnes, Jose Pito Terlay, myself, Senator Joseph Augustine, Senator Chris Duenas, Senator V. Anthony Ada, and Senator Frank Blas. An act to amend Section 26203.2, Article 2 of Chapter 26, Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, relative to increasing the gross threshold for limited exemptions on the business privilege tax for certain small business. I now call upon Senator Torres, the author of the bill, to please make her opening statement, and then we'll proceed with the questions to the panel.
Mr. Chair, under Public Law 36-27, which was an effort that was spearheaded by yourself, Senator San Augustine, businesses in Guam are currently eligible for a business privilege tax reduction on the first $250,000 of their gross receipts, provided that their gross annual income is between $50,000 and $500,000 during the most recent tax year. So this bill, number 206-36, builds upon that bipartisan work by permanently expanding the reduced BPT rate up to $500,000 of the business's gross receipts. We all agree and wish to strengthen the cornerstone of our economy and to see these businesses flourish, so I don't need to belabor that issue. Instead, I'd like to take the time to address the fiscal impact of this measure and why Bill 202 will not jeopardize other sources of critical funding if it becomes law. Mr. Chair, according to the Department of Revenue and Taxation, Bill 202's potential impact to the BPT revenue falls between $900,000 to $1.1 million. This figure is based on the department's historical data, according to its director. And while even in especially in today's climate, $1 million is no small figure, the Bureau of Budget and Management Research's most recent consolidated revenue and expenditure report indicates that the BPT collections are currently above adopted revenue levels. Further, DRT believes that any anticipated revenue loss may be offset on a residual basis through the payment of income taxes on net operating profits once our economy rebounds from the COVID-19 pandemic. This being said, there should not be any concerns of a revenue shortfall under this additional exemption from BPT remittances. Finally, amending the effective date, as we did in this version of the bill, would ensure that any potential revenue impact can be wrapped into the fiscal year 2023 budget when we go into deliberations. The second point I want to address, Mr. Chair, are the concerns of whether this reduction in tax revenue would impact or violate the provisions of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. The short answer to this question is no. A plain reading of the U.S. Treasury's final rule, published in January 27, 2022, indicates that if the total value of revenue reduction is below the de minimis level, which in Guam's case is about $7 million, then the recipient government is deemed not to have any revenue-reducing changes. So if the total is above this threshold, the recipient government must cover the full cost of the tax reduction. It does not automatically result in a loss of ARPA funding. The final ruling recognizes three sources of funds that may offset a reduction in net tax revenue, those being organic revenue growth, an increase in the tax rate, and certain cuts in spending. Given that BPT collections are currently above adopted revenue levels, the impact can be absorbed by that organic revenue growth without implicating the mandate. As my colleagues are aware, this is the first measure to expand this provision after the passage of ARPA in March of 22. The previous initiative is spearheaded by you, Mr. Chair, became law in June of 2020, and simply eliminating a sunset provision of the existing exemption program. So again, just to be absolutely clear, this measure does not result in a revenue shortfall, nor should it jeopardize Guam's standing with the ARPA. Regardless, our small business community has collectively been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and although we talk about this as something that reduces government revenue, this in fact will increase the success rate of our small businesses. And with that, I ask for my colleagues' favorable consideration of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Torres. My colleagues, you should have all received a copy of the letter from the Director of Revenue and Tax, Ms. Daphne Shimizu. That should be also loaded onto the drive. But we'll move along. For the first round of questions, we'll begin with Senator Frank Blas. Sir, do you have any questions for the panel? None? Senator Telotari, do you have any questions to the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the panel. Thank you so much for being here today. I just have a question to Daphne. Good morning, Daphne. I know we can't see each other. Okay, there you are. How you doing? Good morning. How many businesses will be affected by this if this bill becomes law?
You know what, I apologize, Senator Tydegly. I don't have that count. What we did was we really just looked at the dollar impact, and on an annual basis, the impact based on 2021 data and 2019, which is pre-COVID data, is estimated to be 900,000 to 1.1 million, but I don't have the number of businesses readily available. That's something I could ask for from my team.
Okay. So you just got the money but not in business. Okay, so I assume that this amount would probably increase if there were more businesses that file for a license and to do work on Guam. So the amount would go up. But
just to share how we derive the information, we wanted to look at two data sets. We looked at 2021 data, tax data, which our team has been working to try to make sure that they enter into our system. And then we also looked at 2019 BPT data on calendar year basis for both. And when we looked at the information, we found that the impact pre-COVID and post-COVID, between the pre-COVID and post-COVID periods, is again between 900 and 1.1, or a little bit over $1 million. I believe that the 1.1 actually represents the pre-COVID period, which is 2019, and then the 900,000 represents the 2021 tax data.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator Tony Ada, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Senator Brown, do you have any questions this time?
Not at all, Mr. Chairman, but I do want to state, I mean, as we're doing this piecemeal, and I understand that, it's been presented that the majority of our businesses on Guam are small businesses that would fall into this category. But I'm just going to state again for the record, I think with all the revenue that we hear claiming falling into the government, we should address the BPT overall, because it's also the bigger companies on Guam that hire the most people, that contribute to this economic base. And I'm just going to go back and reiterate to our colleagues, we should address the bigger picture and make it equal overall. With that, Mr. Chairman, I have no further comments or questions with regards to this bill.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Madam Vice, none. Senator Amanda Sheldon, do you have any questions? None. Madam Speaker, do you have any questions for the panel on this first round?
Yes, thank you. If I could ask the Revenue and Taxation, when you did your calculation, are you looking at the amended bill?
Yes, ma'am. So
Okay.
that impact that is shown there on the letter is if the threshold for BPT exemptions from the 2% was increased for those businesses that make $500,000 or less. It's currently at $250,000, meaning that the first $250,000 is exempt from the 2%. The $900,000 to 1.1 represents that additional, what would the impact be on our revenues if the threshold was increased to $500,000 instead of it being at $250,000.
All right, and so prior to this, you had told us that the exemption impacted 90% of Guam's businesses. Do you have a figure like that for this?
I'm sorry, I don't have that, but I can provide that. I will pull that data today, Madam Speaker.
All right, and then for BBMR, so BBMR and DOA were neither DRT actually were at the hearing, and at that hearing, when we received the fiscal note, it said, per the August 2021 CRER, BPT collections have experienced an approximate 13.8 shortfall, and additional exemption for BPT remittances will exacerbate the shortfall noted above for FY21 and prospectively. So of course we asked for an updated fiscal note, and is there one? We haven't received it.
No, ma'am. The information from Director Shimizu, the updated information just came yesterday afternoon.
All right, and do you agree, Mr. Byrne, with the conclusion by the sponsor that this will not impact ARP funding or guidelines?
Yes, Madam Speaker, there's a de minimis provision in the ARP final rules, and I agree that this would fall within that provision.
Do you have that in writing that you could provide to us, some kind of statement that says that?
It's in the final rules, and I will extract that.
Your conclusion, because it all requires interpretation of the rules, of course, as applied to Guam. So, yeah, are you able to provide that, or?
I can provide a quotation from the final rules for you. Yeah.
No, your opinion.
Madam Speaker, the rules are rules. I can confirm that this amount will fall. The opinion is whether this amount falls within the de minimis, and that I can confirm, and I will do so.
And pardon?
And I will do so.
Okay. And then, all right, and so when in the last exemption law was passed, I think there was a requirement for a report so that we could see the numbers, and if I'm not mistaken, that was due in January, and I just wanted to know the status of that report. It was supposed to be cumulative number of W-2 forms filed, BPTs paid by businesses using the exemption in 26203.2. How many businesses collect? Yeah.
I'm sorry, Madam Speaker. That's something that my team will have to work on to provide that information. So I will have to get back to you on that.
All right. Mr. Carlson, could you please speak to the FY22 CRER, the January CRER we just received yesterday, I think.
What specifically, ma'am?
Just the conclusions, I guess, as to the BPT collections and the whole general fund.
Page 2, basically specifically for BPT, we provide to the legislature an appropriation allocation and reserve. The appropriation allocation report, which is due like October 15th.
Sorry, can you put the microphone a little closer? Yeah, thank you.
So we provide the legislature on October 15th of every year an allocation of revenues that is adopted by the legislature. So when you look at page 2 of the CRER, it says adopted revenues allocated for the month. That's based upon how we take whatever was adopted for the specific revenue category and allocate it by statistical weight so that we have a basis to compare. So for BPT, we had a $21.4 million number. We received 25.4, or about $4 million more just in the month of January.
So what is our overall BPT in comparison to the appropriated levels?
If you go to page 3, you'll see that you have a different comparative. You have a comparative of adopted revenues to the cumulative period, and then actual revenues received to the same cumulative period. So we're talking October to the end of January. And BPT specifically is up $24.7 million over the amount adopted in the FY22 budget. And if I may make a comment, when we were sitting here with you guys constructing the FY22 budget, we did advocate for a higher number. And it appears that that higher number is trending more to what it was that we suggested to be adopted than what actually was adopted. But that's the long and the short of it, Madam Speaker.
So you're showing 24 million BPT, and what about the overall, 24 million BPT above the projected revenue, and what about general fund above the adopted revenue for general fund?
On the bottom of page 3, you'll see the cumulative tracking, and we're tracking $46 million overall in general fund over the adopted levels for the period.
Do you believe that that's a following conclusion of the first quarter already, right, in December?
Yeah, first 4 months, yes.
Yeah, so given that, do you believe that we are in need of a fiscal realignment plan?
We only do that when we're below, not when we're above.
All right,
So
well,
when
we
we're
have all this excess revenue now that is being appropriated kind of bit by bit, or, but I'm just wondering if it's wiser to go back to the overall budget and take care of everything at once. To make sure that we've covered any shortfalls in agencies or anything else that might be pending. So Mr. Byrne, when we were trying to account for FY 2021 revenues that exceeded the appropriation levels, you said we needed to account in there with, what were they called? That continuing appropriations. Are there continuing appropriations that are also impacting FY 2022? And do you have a kind of an estimated number that you use to make sure we have enough for that?
That would be really hard to do, Madam Speaker, until we get near the end of 2022. As Mr. Carlson said, the the revenues don't come in evenly. They come, that's why he makes a calculation of each month's appropriation. So in short, no, we don't yet have a forward-looking
All right.
continuing appropriation assessment.
And what about the continuing appropriations amount for FY21 that we asked for the last time you were here?
We're just about finished with posting everything that we need to do for fiscal 21. So we will be calculating very shortly the continuing appropriation.
You would be what?
Calculating very shortly the final continuing appropriation.
You still don't know that?
Edward.
Or even an estimate of it? Yes?
Yeah, and may I add to the governor's transfer authority is something we're also working on right now, because we have agencies that overspent. And so we do need to make the proper adjustments prior to the audit taking place. A good example is the fire department. So there's going to have to be some adjustments made to be able to cover the expenditures incurred by the fire department. And that will give you guys a clearer picture of where we settled in 21 after we've made the adjustments to cover over expenditures, including those shortfalls in special funds.
All right. And so, Daphne, how many businesses are not covered by this exemption now? 10%, you think, or less?
I would have to go back and look,
Oh,
Madam
yeah.
Speaker.
Okay, then, all right. Well, then I'll wait for that. Are you going to be able to get that for us this morning?
I'm going to work to try to get that as soon as I can.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Torres, would you like to ask the questions now, or would you like to be the last one on the first round? All right, then we'll proceed to Senator Duenas, and then after Senator Moylan, we'll come back to you, Senator Torres.
I have no questions at this time, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, thank you. Senator Moylan, do you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the author of the bill. Of course, this is one of my passions. We've been attempting to do this since the 35th and gone on to the 36th, and it's especially important now that we can make this come to light, especially with all the increase in prices that we're seeing throughout our nation and getting supplies here. I think this is an important thing for this body to pass. Of course, the Guam Chamber of Commerce is very interested in moving these things forward to support the small businesses. And we have had federal funds available for small businesses, but not every small business was able to avail to this. Some of the calculations were provided for us that going from the $250,000 to $500,000 is about $400 a month in savings. Could be very important for folks that are struggling to keep things going, but it could be also very helpful for things to move forward. So, Mr. Byrne, I appreciate that you clarified with us the guidelines, the final report rules. I do state that this is, it will not affect our American Rescue Plan funding. So that was clear. I appreciate that. And I was able to come across a few articles, and possibly you have as well, where many states in the continent are looking at different ways to reduce taxes to support their businesses. If you have some ideas, maybe you can share with us what you've read and understand that is happening in our nation today.
Thank you, Senator. That's a very wide-ranging question. But if I could just address the narrower question first. Yeah, a number of states, I'm aware, are dealing with this issue of how to deal with revenue reductions and whether it does affect their ARPA funding. And so, as you say, some of them come up with some fairly creative ways of describing these revenue reductions in order to avoid any disqualification under that rule. Most states that I can see have adopted a process of kind of mirroring the federal government's EIP payments, and they've paid out payments to the taxpayers of those states, which is technically not a revenue reduction. And I hope no one's going to ask me to comment upon the legality of that. But that's what most states have done, and they're kind of juggling their own consciences on that matter. But it's obviously a legal issue, and I really don't want to get too far down that. But that's what most states have done in order to deal with getting money into people's hands.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. You know what I really think about this, the Dave Santos program, which is a wonderful program, and I think this should move forward. But this is basically, my understanding of this program is an incubator program. It's not necessarily for a company to remain in that. I think our main goal with this program is to help businesses reach that level. Because once they go over the $500,000, then they're paying BBT. These companies are paying BBT. And how they're able to do that is because they're really invested into their company. Then the turnaround is much better for, I believe, our government by seeing more employees, by seeing additional companies grow, by then really putting their, have grown to a level where they can sustain themselves and pay the full BBT. And hopefully by that point, it's no longer at 5%, it went down to 4%. So we shall see. But for the first round of questions, I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Toyce, you'll be the last for the round one. Ma'am?
Okay, Daphne, I just wanted to mention and maybe have you confirm to the best of your recollection. But in our last committee of the whole that we had in May, there was, or at a last committee of the whole meeting in May, some of the figures that were presented that we noted, which motivated us to go down this path of increasing the threshold with the limited BPT exemption was, it was reported at the time that 90% of filers reported less than $500,000 in annual income. And of that amount, 85% were actually in the lowest bracket of between $50,000 to $250,000 a year. So where this bill affects the other 5% are those that reported income within the $250,000 to $500,000 bracket, as I understand. So do you recall that figure? Because that then, if we're looking at how many people are actually impacted by this bill, that would then, we could narrow it to approximately 5% of tax filers who report between $250,000 to $500,000 in income. Is that your recollection as well?
So I do know we have that information. I don't recall exactly the numbers, but I recall that a high amount, or like a bit 85% or more of the BPT filers did fall below, I believe, the 500,000 threshold. But I need to go check that, actually, Senator Torres. I do know for sure that we do have about 15,000 BPT filers. So, you know, in terms of the population of BPT filers, we have about 15,000. And again, and maybe as you are contemplating how to address this, then that number we have, I have to go back to my team to determine. I'm actually communicating with them right now, so that we can update and provide you with some data in terms of percentages, so you know how many businesses are impacted. Yeah.
And I recall too that when we did the public hearing for this bill, some of those numbers were represented in our committee report. That we knew that in fact about 90% of all businesses on Guam fall below the $500,000 reporting, but if we were to carve out that 5% that actually is between $250,000 to $500,000, that then jives with your letter today that demonstrates what the true impact of this bill would be, which is between $900,000 to $1.1 million, because we are in fact just looking at 5% of 15,000 filers. So that then makes sense in terms of why that impact is not as steep as one would think if we knew that there are so many people below the 500,000 mark. And it's only because it affects that group that is currently between 250,000 and 500,000, where this would now give them the added advantage of that tax exemption. So I just want to point that out because there's been question about the numbers that are floating and how many people it affects. So our committee was able to get that information based on prior testimony before the Committee of the Whole. So I hope that helps my colleagues to better understand the margin that we're looking at and the impact as it correlates to that margin. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Colleagues, that completes the first round. We will now begin the second round. And we will begin we'll start in the middle, then we'll go around, and Senator Frank, you'll be last. Senator Tony Ada, do you have any questions, sir?
No questions for this round, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Please be reminded, this is the second and last round. Before we get to comments, nothing from Senator Brown. Madam Vice Speaker, do you have any questions for the panel? None? None?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, to the panel members here. Good to see you this morning. And maybe I just want to note that based on the fiscal note, the revenue losses may be offset through the payment of income taxes on the net operating profits. And this is especially true as the number of small businesses increases. How many new business licenses has DRT issued in 2021? And are you able to estimate how many of those businesses would qualify for this exemption? And I know earlier you said you didn't have the numbers, but I was hoping to frame it in this way so that we could see, whereas I know that we received your note on the revenue historical data based on the impact. So maybe you can share some insight to this.
Happy to, Madam Vice Speaker. First of all, very great to see you. And secondly, with regards to the amounts, I'm sorry, we don't have the total count for the new BPT licenses. That's something, again, I will work to try to obtain so that the body can have that information. Senator Moylan did provide me with, I guess, prior communication that my team had with him with regards to, just to go back to the ranges, which I know Senator Torres had brought up earlier. This is based on tax year 2017 data, but generally our data pre-COVID has been pretty consistent year over year. So with regards to those organizations that fell between the 250 and 500,000 range based on 2017 data, that represented 4.3% of the total population of filers. And those between 0 and 250 represented about 89% of the filers. So those that were 500,000 and above, that of course is the difference. So to the Speaker, Madam Speaker, and then also Senator Torres, that at least gives you kind of an estimate of how many businesses will be impacted by this particular bill. Based on 2017 data, it's about 646. That's what it looks like.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Senator Manishan, do you have any questions? None? We'll now proceed to Senator Moylan. Do you have any questions? And then we'll proceed this way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For DRT, ma'am, you wanted, if you don't mind, just clearly state again, once again, the memo and who is it from and what information you have in front, and possibly we can provide copies of that to this body, please.
Absolutely. So our former Taxpayer Service Administrator, Mr. Larry Terlehi, had been in communication with Senator Moylan in his office with regards to the amount or the taxpayer count between $500,000 to $5 million. And that information that I just provided is based on an email that was dated in June 2021. And so prior to our Taxpayer Service Administrator retiring. So this could be provided. Thank you.
Senator Moylan, is that something, Daphne, that you wanted to provide? Let's take a quick recess and let's get this loaded so everybody can see it and have copies made. Thank you. Committee of the Whole is called back to order. We'll now, the information that Senator Moylan presented has been uploaded and provided to everyone, hard copy. Senator Moylan, you still got 4 more minutes.
I'll use less. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just move forward regarding OFB. Mr. Guerrero provided an earlier dated statement for us regarding their analysis of 202. Of course, that's back in October, and I appreciate if Mr. Guerrero can give us an update of what he's seen since then till now, please. Mr. Guerrero.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. If you notice that the fiscal note that the OFB prepared on Bill 202 was done back in October 21st, 2021, which at that time, utilizing the CER report that as of August 2021, the BBT was actually anticipating a shortfall of about 13.8 million. I'm happy to say as of today, going back and we're taking maybe in account of 4, 5, 6, maybe 6 months of tracking since that period, the BBT is tracking way above what we estimated for fiscal year 2022 in the amount of about 24.5 million. So I can say that there is a great turnaround in the BBT over the last 6 months, and based on current trends, hopefully that this trend will continue for the remaining of the fiscal year for the BBT.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. The impact of 202 onto your projections, what is the estimated impact that you estimate with the passage of 202?
Well, using the numbers, the figures that were used this morning regarding the impact of Bill 202, we're talking about anywhere from 900,000 to 1.1 million. If you take that number and compare it to basically the total BBT for the whole fiscal year FY22 of 238 million, I mean, gee, we're not even talking about 0.0001% of the BBT. So in reality, if there is an impact, say at the most of 1.1, I think that impact at this point will be very nominal and wouldn't have any severe impact on BBT at this point.
Appreciate that, Mr. Guerrero. So within that short period of time from October to what we're seeing now, we went from a minus 15 million to a plus $24.5 million within 6 months. You're letting us know that the total impact of 202 will be 1.1 million, and based on the overall BBT collection of 238 million, that's a 0.001% for the possibility of us helping these small businesses move forward and hire people and make their doors open and really do good for the economy. I think that makes more than common sense. I think that's an excellent way to look at it, and I'm looking forward to this bill successfully moving forward. I thank you, Mr. Guerrero, for that clear, precise information.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Chris, do you have any questions, sir? None? I'll proceed to the Speaker and everyone else, and I will leave Senator Torres for the last. Is that okay, Senator Torres? On this round. Madam Speaker, do you have any questions, ma'am?
Yes, thank you. So yeah, I wanted to confirm with OFB. So their fiscal note that they prepared for the bill at the hearing showed us 3.7 million less in impact from the bill, but now you're confirming 1.1, consistent with what DRT has said?
Again, Senator, remember that bill was prepared back in October 2021. Since then, there has been a very good tracking on the BBT, and we if I was to redo or resubmit a fiscal note, an updated fiscal note, it would show that is no longer deficit balance projected.
All right, and I want to thank the Director of Revenue and Taxation for the numbers that they've provided us. This is the data that was, I thought should have been provided during the public hearing so that we all know how many taxpayers we're talking about, the data that's been always provided by DRT. So we have it now, and we have an estimate of the impact so we can, with confidence, move forward with this bill. I just want to, if you could explain, Director, why we are using 2017 and 2018 data as opposed to more recent data, especially post-COVID data.
Sure, thank you so much, Speaker Terlahi. Actually, so what we did was, this is information that we had gathered since last January 2021. And so I don't have the updated data for as of now for 2021 tax year. Over this last year, just to share, our team has been working to try to get caught up with regards to our BPT, what information we have in terms of BPT. I think that at one point, the public auditor, when he did do a performance audit, indicated that we were about 15 months behind in terms of BPT. So our team has been working to try to get caught up with the BPT, just to share with this body that also the bill that mandated the online filing for BPT filings has been very helpful to us, which went into effect in March 2021. As I mentioned, there's 15,000 BPT filers, so that's about 180,000 BPT filings a year. So, you know, I'm going to work to try to get that information for you, Madam Speaker, but we don't have that updated yet. Again, this information was provided a while ago when there was other discussion, so I don't have, but thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate if you could get that information. The reason is because when we passed the last exemption to BPT, you know, that reporting requirement that was put in there was to confirm, you know, the speculation about the impacts of this bill, that it would, you know, of these exemptions. So we're counting that these exemptions are going to spur small businesses to new ones, of course, to come forward. And we asked for the data on the number of new businesses that had filed BPT, of course, the amounts of BPT that really were impacted, actual impacts, right, from these exemptions and things like that, so that we can confirm. And then we even asked for W-2 forms, I think, to confirm whether businesses were, this exemption was really allowing businesses to hire more employees. So that's our hope with these exemptions. That was, of course, the hope behind the Dave Santos exemptions in the first place. We've expanded those greatly during the last 2 years, and I support that. So I support this expansion, you know, to this class of businesses as well. And I want to note that although I oppose the 2018 increase in BPT, these exemptions that we have been granting reduce that BPT even below that rise in BPT. It went from 4 to 5%, but these exemptions grant the businesses an exemption down to 3%. So I think it's quite significant, and I just wanted to note that, and I really do hope to see the data so that we can see that is transforming into increased jobs and increased expansion of increased small businesses. I guess I would like to ask you, Mr. Byrne, if the governor has said that she's considering repealing that rise in BPT, and if we know what impact, what's the difference in that impact, or how much that impact would be. I want to compare it to what the impact of this is, bringing it down to 3% for some of the businesses.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I would respectfully defer that question to my colleagues who do that kind of calculation.
Sure.
Thank you for the question, Madam Speaker. As everybody here knows, the governor submitted her FY23 executive budget request, and her BPT numbers are still at the 5% level. To be clear, the governor is receptive to looking at the BPT reduction if there is a permanent, proven replacement revenue source. She will entertain that. We had talked for years already about internet sales tax, leveling the playing field, capturing revenue that is escaping taxation and collection on internet sales. I think in the same vein as helping small businesses with this exemption, if there was a level playing field with the same people who are providing goods and services locally, and the price gap is reduced, and the government of Guam is able to capture some of that untaxed revenue, there could be a very, very good meeting of the minds to be able to take a look at what the internet sales tax would bring, and therefore assist the business community, number one, but number two, also, we have crumbling infrastructure, we have a lot of things that we need to do. I personally am not in support of reducing the BPT until we have something that we can replace it with, because taking $60-some million out of the revenue available for appropriation in any fiscal year, particularly when we need assistance in many areas, deferred maintenance in schools, for example, highways that are not covered by the federal funds. I think that if we could come to a meeting of the minds in that regard, the governor would be very, very receptive to that discussion.
You said $60 million. Is that still the estimated impact of reducing the BPT if we've already granted exemptions down to 3% for now? It looks like if this bill passes, about 90% or more of companies.
If this bill passes, Madam Speaker, the effective date is the beginning of the next fiscal year. So effectively, you're taking $1 million off the top. As Mr. Guerrero stated, based upon the revenue and taxations estimate, I think that's something that we can all absorb, and that for the reasons you stated as well, job creation, and all the other things that you explained, I think, we'll be fine with this.
But is your impact amount the same? You're saying 60 million, but isn't that an old figure based on, no exemptions?
No.
So you're still saying
No.
that the 5% or 10% of businesses that make over 500,000 are having that the increase to them from 4 to 5% accounts for $60 million?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Because the 60 million was the estimate overall back in 2018 for the impact of that rise in BPT.
Well, we went from 4% to 5%, but please remember that we did this mid-fiscal year, and the audit for 2018 shows that we did cut government expenses by 30 million. And so the $30 million that was added to the economy halfway through the fiscal year is what you're referring to. It was a 6-month, $30 million, but for the entire fiscal year, it's 60, because we did it halfway through the fiscal year.
All right. I remember the estimates at that time to be $60 million impact from the rise in BPT. So you're saying no?
Oh, no, you're correct. In a full fiscal year, it would be 60.
For all businesses back then. And now we've got 90% of the businesses what that repeal would not apply to. It's more advantageous for them to take the Dave Santos exemption.
No, I think the $1 million stands regardless of the class.
Pardon?
What DRT has provided.
No, I'm asking you about the estimates on the BPT repeal.
Yes.
How many? Yeah, that would affect now only the 10% that are not affected by this bill.
No, not necessarily, because you're reducing the overall tax rate to everybody.
Right, from 5 to 4%, but these people have an exemption down to 3%. 90% of the taxpayers already have that exemption lower than what the proposed repeal would be.
I still think that what we're saying here will hold at the $1 million level, and that the exemption, the reduction overall from 5% to 4% is in excess of $60 million.
For the 10% of the businesses.
For the overall.
All right. And, okay, so again, now that we have the figures in front of us that actually can give us the real data, I support this bill. I've always supported repeal of that increase in BPT. This actually brings the exemption, again, is more advantageous than that repeal of the BPT would have been, because it brings these companies down to 3% GRT. And so I support that. I do hope that we will be able to see the numbers to show that this has, afforded the businesses increased employment opportunities and increased number of businesses, as well as, the thing we haven't been able to put into any report is, the impacts on the consumers, right? And if you have any suggestions on how we can track that, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Senator Tidicle, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the beginning, the first round, I had asked the questions for the, regarding the numbers on how many businesses out there, and I'm glad that we've got some kind of numbers here. I know, Daphne, you don't have the updated version one, but of these numbers that were provided for FY 28 and 17, it's showing here, and because the listening audience may not be able to see this, it's about 15,237 at the latest one of those who are above the $500,000 threshold, below the 500,000 threshold, correct?
Just to clarify, Senator Tadegui, and thank you for your question and for trying to clarify. With regards to that 15,237, that count represents the total taxpayer count. So that's the entire population of all BPT filers. And how you read the worksheet that was provided by DRT, those filers that reported zero, because there are filers, BPT filers that report zero income, that was 2,765. Those that are between $1 and $50,000, or right below $50,000 at 7,652. Those between 50,000 to 100,000 in terms of BPT gross receipts is 1,217. From 100,000 to 250,000, that's 1,286 BPT filers. And then from 250,000 to 500,000, that's 768 filers. And all of those BPT filers above 500,000, who report more than $500,000 in gross receipts, that represents 1,549 BPT filers. And that totals to 15,237.
Okay. And based on those numbers that you were just giving us at the 1.1 million that this will cost, but I was thinking about those individuals, businesses who during the pandemic, that once upon a time was making $1 million, a lot of them in FY 2020 went below that because of the pandemic. So I can only assume that even though those businesses that were making more than 500,000, the numbers are actually greater now because of the pandemic. Would you agree?
With regard, I don't have, I can't answer that full question, but what I can say, as I mentioned before, with regards to the information that was provided to Senator Torres, which gave the impact of this additional increase in the threshold, there was two figures that were provided in terms of what's the annual impact. The pre-COVID annual impact, which is for calendar year 2019, that particular impact was at 1.1. Now, what we're saying is the impact based on 2021 tax filings is less, which is 900,000. Now, how that kind of translates to the whole population, I don't have that information, but that's what we can say is that that's the range.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying here, but I also know that, those businesses that once were doing very well, in pre-COVID are now, falling below the amounts that they have to pay in BPT. So I think the numbers may even, gotten higher in that perspective. So, but you're assuming that it's $1.1 million that it'll cost. It's very minimal if you think about it, considering after dealing with ARP funding and CARES Act that's coming into our island, all this money, that 1.1 is very minimal. But, I've supported the bill that actually started at 250, and I continue to support anything that would help our businesses. And I really feel they need that help now. But thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Senator Tidegui. Senator Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, good morning to the panel. I guess a question to Mr. Carlson. Going back to your earlier presentation or testimony that our collections are tracking above what was projected. Is that a correct statement, an accurate statement? I mean, my understanding of that statement?
The discussion, Senator Blas, was based on the consolidated revenue expense report that we submitted, I believe, yesterday. And the information that I recited at the speaker's request was specific to BPT and overall collections. And I think Mr. Guerrero also chimed in on the strength of the collections.
And what was that? What's that figure?
You want me to read it again?
Just, give me a DI math. What was projected and what was collected? What's the difference?
Overall, I'll go back to page 3, sir. The adopted revenues for the cumulative period, which is October, November, December, and January, were estimated to be $80,774,000. We collected for BPT $105 million, or $24.7 million more in the 4-month period.
Okay.
That's just BPT, sir.
That's just BPT?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Ms. Shimizu, Daphne, the estimate of what the impact is, okay, now, no, don't get me wrong, I like the bill, I support the bill, okay, but your estimate was the impact would be anywhere between 900 to
900 to 1.1 million.
1.1 million. And what data did you use to be able, I'm looking, and the reason why I'm going to ask this question is I'm looking here at what was provided to us as most recent data, which is obviously pre-pandemic.
Correct.
Right? Was that based on pre-pandemic estimates or?
Yes, thank you so much, Senator Blas, for this question. With regards to the impact, what we did was we looked at 2 years worth of data. We looked at FY 2019, or sorry, we go by calendar year, and I just wanted to share, we have to go by calendar year because that's how the BPT, the exemptions accumulate, right? And so we base the exemptions on a calendar year. Now, the estimate of between $900,000 and $1.1 million was based on pre-COVID and then, well, post-COVID. So we used 2021 tax data. That 2021 tax data equates to that 900,000, which was indicated in the letter that I provided to Senator Torres. And the pre-COVID or calendar year 2019 data was how we used to estimate the 1.1 million. So the amounts there represent both a pre-COVID figure. Of course, it had to be an estimate because we didn't have LEX-B in place at that time yet, or the limited exemption for certain small businesses yet. So we estimated that to be 1.1 million. And then based on what we saw for 2021 calendar year, we came up with $900,000.
Okay, so basically, if we're already tracking about what? We're tracking substantially more than what we had projected in BPT. And what we're asking here, the impact would be negligible, almost negligible at $900 to $1.1 million. Do you have a way of being able to currently track the number of businesses that existed pre-pandemic, obviously were around pre-pandemic, but then as a result of the pandemic, went from this range of making this much to now considerably less or substantially less? Do you have that ability to be able to do that real time today?
So what we can work to do, Senator Blas, is to try to pull the data for 2021 and put it in a format similar to what you're seeing here. I will have to get back to you on that. I've actually already been communicating with my team to try to get that as soon as we can. And as soon as I get that, I will provide that to the body.
Okay, because what I want to basically see is, and I appreciate, and I have to, I agree with everybody, we'd like to be able to continue to see, I remember Steve Gurel saying this during the budget hearing that these were the projections, but he hopes that he's wrong and that the projections are much better, okay? That said, though, I really want to see the reality of this whole thing, because then, you know, granted that we have collected more in BPT, right down to it, what's the funding source to all of this for all the businesses? Okay, and is that going to exist, continue to exist? If we're confident in that we're going to continue to track above the projections, would there be any consternation if the enactment date for this bill was more so upon enactment as opposed to waiting until October of 2022? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to add, I know that the body proposes to try to have this be effective beginning October 2022. However, for the purposes of trying to track, and of course people have started to file their BPTs for the year, some really, on DRT's perspective, that it really, from a pragmatic perspective, as we work to try to implement and execute these types of programs, on a calendar year basis is really ideal. And a fiscal year basis, because again, the exemptions are calculated based on a calendar year, it makes it a little bit challenging because some people may have to amend their returns, et cetera, which is what we saw also when I believe the limited exemption for certain small businesses went into effect the last time. So we really highly, from a practical standpoint, it's easier for us to manage. Now, of course, just to share, because this has the limited exemption for certain small businesses, which is basically an enhanced Dave Santos. First, we had that limited exemption 1, then we had a limited exemption, I guess 2.0, which happened. And whenever that happens, what our team does is we review again the language that's provided in the final, law, so that we can make sure that we change out our forms, change out the calculations, and make adjustments to our system. So that takes a little bit of time. And so to have it be implemented or effective upon enactment, in terms of rev and taxes being able to execute it, may be a little bit challenging.
Well, wouldn't it be challenging even if it's going to be in October 2022? Because then, whether it's been enacted today or in October 2022, you have to base yourself on the last calendar year, which was last year. So it doesn't make any difference.
Well, if it is October 2022, then of course that allows us for the opportunity for programming, et cetera.
I appreciate that, but I'm also looking at, and I understand it's going to be a challenge, okay? Yes. However, businesses out there have got a challenge in itself.
Absolutely.
Okay, the whole discussion about whether or not this provides an exemption to down to 3% or whether it continues to remain at 5%. My thing is, whether it's 5% or 3%, 5% of zero is the same as 3% of zero. If businesses don't survive, if they don't exist, this whole discussion is for naught.
Absolutely. Might I add, and thank you again, Senator Blas, for this line of questioning, because it's very important on the rev and tax side, if this was to become law. We would request that we at least be given about 90 days to be able to implement and execute. So, of course, I know the bill, the way the language is proposed, goes into effect in October. If it was to be effective immediately, it would be very hard for us. And I'm not, I wanted to mention, though, I guess just perhaps for future reference, just so that way the body can have an understanding of what is involved when we have to make changes. It is a little bit challenging, and it makes it challenging for some of our taxpayers as well, although yes, you're correct, it is a great benefit for them. So in terms of the effective date, if that is to be discussed today, we ask that it not be immediate and that we at least be given about 90 days. The other thing is there may be some administrative costs for the purpose of making sure that we can make adjustments to our system. That may be involved as well. That's also something that we request that the body consider.
I appreciate all that. I think I'm going to try to take this question in less than 20 seconds. Anyways, so whether it is effective within 90 days from the enactment, which is what you're asking, at least, okay, or October 22nd, what it has going to be for a business. If a business made more than $600,000, let's say for this purpose of the discussion, if they made more than $600,000 last year, okay, but this year tracking in less than, let's say, $400,000, they're still not going to be eligible for this because this is based on last year's tracking numbers. Isn't that correct?
I believe so, yes. I have to check that, yes, but I believe you look back. I will have to confirm that, though, Senator, because just to share with you, the way that the original Dave Santos was calculated and the way that the new LEXP is the language of the law, it's different. So I will have to clarify that, sir.
Okay. I'm just going to forewarn you, Celeste, okay, that whatever the amendment that I propose that I would like to be able to propose, it's not going to be, okay, it's going to put a lot more work on your shoulders, but it's, you know, it's to help to save the businesses. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe Daphne can explain. You know, we received two documents. One was from Senator Moylan's, and the other one was from you. It's a draft document. First one from Senator Moylan, if I'm correct, and just say yes or no.
Yes.
Taxpayer account. It's talking about individual person, correct?
So I wanted to clarify the difference between, and thank you to Senator Moylan for helping to refresh my memory, appreciate that. With regards to the information that's provided from Senator Moylan, which was originated from an email that was coming from our prior taxpayer service administrator, Mr. Lawrence Terlahi, that information, if you look at that one sentence right above the table, it indicates that that is for those taxpayers that make from $5 million and below. It does not capture the full population of all tax filers. So if you'll notice, if you add up the total there, it's shy of 15,000. So the information that I provided was actually for all of the population of BPT filers, which historically we've had over 15,000 BPT filers. So yes, sir.
Let's slow down. You're getting it. Only referring to Moylan's first. This is about a taxpayer account, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that my colleagues understand. This is only as good as to tell you that how many people are making so much. That's all this document is saying. It has nothing to do with business. And the reason why I say this is because if you look at this one document, Daphne, and you do the simple math, it totals 14,866. I know for a fact of individuals that make 5 million or more, they're in businesses, and your draft document reflects that there's 15,000 businesses on the draft document. Am I correct?
Correct.
So that's telling you that there's several people that own more than one business. That's
right. So just to share with you, actually, that I believe that the information that Senator Moylan has is basically it's like a subset, or it's a portion of what the information is that I provided. It isn't the full population, and that's why it's less than 15,000 taxpayers. Now, just also to kind of share with the body, the number of business licenses does not necessarily equate to the number of BPT filers. You can have multiple business licenses, but file them on a single BPT form. We have over 20,000 business licenses, last I checked. However, we only have 15,000 BPT filers. So, you know, again, that just to share with the body, the business license does not necessarily equate to, or the number of business licenses is not necessarily, it's not a one-to-one with a BPT filer.
Thank you. I wanted to get that from you. And at the same token, you know, I'm in support of this bill. I'm a co-sponsor, okay? So I like this bill. And the other part, the only other question I wanted to make sure is very clear and understood by my colleagues. When this, and I'm speaking positively about the bill, when this bill passes and the governor signs it, we need to understand that, number one, this does not impact the people that apply for a business license today, because you have to show that you made money last year and that you met the threshold of 500,000. So for the people listening, please, you see this as an opportunity? Yes, get in business, please. And hopefully, if you meet the threshold the following year, then this could apply moving forward. This is all moving forward based on the folks that are in business. And if you can just verify that, because that's how it's always been,
Well,
how it was
that's-
written originally.
Right, and that's, and I, as I mentioned, I need to clarify certain matters for Senator Blas, but how I understand LEXP, or the limited exemption for certain small businesses to operate, is that you look back to the prior year, you have to have had more than zero in income, so you basically have had to be in business in the prior year in order to be able to qualify for this particular, at least, sorry, for LEXP, which is a limited exemption for certain small businesses. That's how I understand. Now I will have to go back to my technical experts as well, just to clarify for you.
All right, thank you, Daphne. I just wanted to make sure that that was clearly understood to my colleagues and to the people of Guam that are listening on this. This bill is to help current business and future business moving forward. The 1.1 maximum nominal, not really an impact. I understood where Mr. Carlson was coming from when he mentioned the 60 million. For my colleagues that were in the body at the time, that was all about the Trump tax cut. That's all it was for. We're still trying to recover from that because the businesses who are making money, and there's nothing we can do about it. But I know that I've spoken to my colleagues here, and this is a gradual increase or decrease or tax exemption for businesses. We started with 250. We're now at the 500,000. I look forward to my colleagues when we join hands and we go up to the next bracket. Then we will be asking for revenue and tax to give us an impact. And hopefully by that time, like Mr. Carlson had mentioned, that we have a source of revenue, the lost revenue through internet or from whatever source. Use tax got to go in full swing, and I know that's a monster for revenue and tax when you're trying to go after every penny that's lost in the system. And sometimes a lot of it is beyond your control. And with that, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Sidis Masi, Senator San Augustine, Senator Torres, you are recognized. No questions. We will take a 5-minute recess. Thank you.
Sit down first. Sit down. Sit down while I announce. The committee of the whole is called back to order. At this point, we were going to go to the amendments, and we're going to continue the recess, but I'd like to thank the panel that have showed up today. And I expect you back this afternoon after we finish with the amendments. We'll return at 2 o'clock for continuance of the other bills. So with that, we're on recess at this point, and we excuse the panel. Thank you very much. We'll see you this afternoon. Mr. Guerrero, Mr. Byrne, Lester, and Ms. Daphne. Thank you. We'll continue on recess.